The wind howled through the trees. Its moan was like a mournful cry. Dead leaves swirled around our ankles. They were dry and brittle. We walked deeper into the woods, deeper into the darkness.
Are you sure about this?
Don't be such a scaredy cat.
But the truth was, I felt a shiver down my spine too. There was something creepy about these woods, something that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end.
This is where the legend comes from, the Witch of Whispering Woods. They say she still haunts these parts.
That's just a story, Katie, to scare little kids.
But even as I said it, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone or something was watching us. The trees grew thicker. The sunlight struggled to penetrate the dense canopy. The air grew cold and damp. It felt heavy like a wet blanket.
Look!
Max pointed to a clearing ahead. In the center stood a dilapidated cabin. Its wooden walls were rotting. The windows were boarded up. An eerie silence hung over the place. It was like a scene from a horror movie.
Whoa, this is it, the witch's cabin.
Curiosity drew us in. We cautiously approached the cabin. The silence was broken only by the sound of our own breathing and the pounding of our hearts. Max reached out and pushed open the creaking door. Dust motes danced in the faint ray of sunlight that pierced the gloom. The air inside was stale and musty. It smelled of decay. We stepped inside, our hearts pounding with a mix of fear and curiosity. The floorboards groaned under our weight, each step echoing through the silent cabin. Cobwebs hung from every corner, swaying slightly as if disturbed by our presence. The only light came from the slivers of sun that squeezed through the cracks in the boarded-up windows, casting eerie shadows on the walls.
This place is creepy, he whispered, his voice barely audible.
He was right. The atmosphere was thick with an unsettling energy. The air was heavy with a strange energy. It felt evil. We explored the cabin, our senses heightened. There was a rusty fireplace, a rickety table, and a couple of broken chairs, all covered in a thick layer of dust. In the corner we found a dusty old chest, its presence almost demanding our attention. It was bound with iron chains and a heavy padlock, as if guarding something precious or dangerous.
What do you think is in there? I asked, my curiosity piqued.
I shrugged, trying to appear nonchalant despite the growing excitement.
Who knows? Maybe the witch's treasure, he speculated, his eyes gleaming with intrigue.
We managed to pry open the chest, our hands trembling with anticipation. Inside we found a book, its cover worn and ancient. It was bound in ancient-looking leather, the texture rough under our fingers. The pages were yellowed with age, fragile and delicate. Strange symbols were etched on the cover, their meaning lost to time.
What is that? He asked, his voice tinged with both fear and fascination.
I carefully lifted the book out of the chest, feeling its weight and history.
I don't know, but I think it's a spell book, he said, his voice barely a whisper.
As soon as I said it, the wind outside howled. The cabin grew darker, shadows lengthening ominously. The air crackled with energy, a palpable tension filling the room.
Read something from it, I urged, my curiosity overpowering my fear.
Her eyes gleamed with a mixture of fear and excitement, mirroring my own emotions.
Are you crazy? We shouldn't be messing with this stuff, he said urgently, his concern evident.
But I was curious, the allure of the unknown too strong to resist, and a little bit scared, the fear adding to the thrill. I opened the book and began to read aloud, the words feeling foreign, yet familiar. The words were in a language I didn't recognize, yet they seemed to flow off my tongue effortlessly. But they seemed to flow off my tongue, as if I had always known them. As soon as I uttered the last syllable, the room went ice-cold, our breaths visible in the frigid air. A blood-curdling scream echoed through the cabin, sending chills down our spines. The book burst into flames in my hands, the heat intense and sudden, as if the very words had ignited it. I dropped the burning book. It landed on the floor with a thud. The flames died down as quickly as they had appeared, but the room remained freezing cold. We stared at each other, our eyes wide with fear. What had we done?
Did you guys hear that scream?
It came from the book.
I didn't know what to think. One thing was for sure. We had awakened something evil. The shadows in the cabin seemed to deepen. They writhed and twisted, taking on sinister shapes. The air grew heavy and oppressive. It felt like something was closing in on us.
We need to get out of here.
We scrambled to our feet and ran for the door. But as I reached for the handle, it turned ice cold. It wouldn't budge.
It's locked.
I cried, rattling the handle. We were trapped. Panic surged through me, a cold sweat breaking out on my forehead. We were trapped in this cursed cabin, with whatever evil we had unleashed lurking in the shadows.
We have to break down the door. It's our only chance.
Max yelled, his voice echoing through the empty, haunted space. He kicked at the door with all his might, but it wouldn't budge. It was like it was nailed shut, sealed by some unseen force. Katie was frantically searching for another way out, her eyes wide with fear.
There's got to be another way out of here. We can't stay.
But there wasn't. The forest outside seemed to mock our desperation. The windows were boarded up tight, no light seeping through the cracks. The fireplace was too small to climb through. We were trapped with no escape in sight. Suddenly the floor beneath us began to tremble, sending vibrations through our feet. The walls groaned and swayed, as if the cabin itself was alive and angry. The cabin was collapsing around us, pieces of wood and debris falling from above.
We're gonna die. This is it.
Max screamed. I grabbed Katie's hand, holding on tight.
We have to get out of here now.
We ducked and weaved through the falling debris, our hearts pounding in our chests. The air was thick with dust and the smell of rotting wood. The noise was deafening, a cacophony of destruction. Then, just as suddenly as it started, it stopped. The dust settled. We were alive but barely, but we weren't in the cabin anymore. The eerie silence was unsettling. We were in the forest, surrounded by towering trees and an ominous mist. The forest was even darker than before. The trees seemed to press in on us, their branches like grasping claws. The air was thick with a strange, sweet scent that made me feel dizzy.
Where are we?
Katie asked, her voice small and scared.
I don't know, but I don't think we're in Kansas anymore.
The forest felt different, wrong. It was like we had stepped into a nightmare. We started walking, hoping to find a way out, but the trees seemed to shift and change around us. Every path we took led us in circles. We were lost.
I think we're going crazy.
Max said, his voice trembling. He was right. The forest was playing tricks on our minds. As night fell, the forest came alive with strange sounds. There were whispers on the wind, rustling in the undergrowth, and eerie howls in the distance. It was like the whole forest was watching us. We stumbled through the forest, our fear growing with every passing moment. The darkness seemed to swallow us whole, making it hard to see even a few feet ahead. The trees seemed to close in around us, their branches like grasping claws, reaching out to ensnare us in their cold, unyielding grip. The air was thick with the scent of decay and the sound of our own ragged breathing. Every step felt like a struggle, as if the forest itself was trying to hold us back.
We're never going to get out of here. It felt like the forest was a living entity, determined to keep us trapped forever.
Max whimpered. He was right. The fear in his eyes mirrored my own. We were lost and alone in this nightmare with no clear path to safety. Suddenly we heard a twig snap, the sound echoing ominously through the trees. We froze, our hearts pounding in our chests, the silence around us becoming deafening. Someone, or something, was out there with us. The feeling of being watched was overwhelming.
Who's there? My voice echoed back, sounding small and frightened.
I called out, my voice trembling. Silence. The forest seemed to hold its breath. Then a low growl that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at the same time. It sent chills down our spines. We took off running, our fear lending us speed. The adrenaline coursing through our veins was the only thing keeping us going. We didn't know what was chasing us, but we knew we didn't want to find out. The terror of the unknown pushed us forward. The forest floor was uneven, and we stumbled and fell, our hands scraping against the rough ground. Thorns ripped at our clothes, leaving painful scratches on our skin. Branches whipped at our faces, leaving stinging welts. But we didn't dare slow down. Stopping was not an option. Our survival depended on our speed. We ran until we couldn't run anymore. We collapsed on the forest floor, gasping for breath. Our lungs burned, our legs screamed in protest.
I can't go any further.
Max gasped, his chest heaving. Katie was sobbing quietly beside me. I didn't blame her. We were all terrified. We listened intently for any sound of our pursuer, but the forest was silent, eerily silent.
I think we lost it.
I said, my voice barely a whisper. But even as I said it, I didn't believe it. We couldn't escape that easily. Suddenly, a cold, bony hand clamped down on my shoulder. I screamed and spun around. Standing behind me was a figure shrouded in darkness. Its eyes glowed an eerie green in the gloom. The witch. Terror froze me in my tracks. The witch's skeletal face was twisted into a grotesque grin. Her bony fingers dug into my flesh.
You shouldn't have disturbed my slumber.
Her voice was like nails on a chalkboard. Max and Katie were cowering behind me, their faces pale with fear. We were outnumbered, outmatched, doomed.
What do you want?
I croaked, my voice dry with fear.
Your souls.
The witch hissed. She raised her bony hand. A green light emanated from her fingertips. I knew this was it, the end. But I couldn't let her take my friends.
Run!
I screamed, shoving Max and Katie away from me. They hesitated for a moment, then turned and fled. The witch laughed, a chilling sound that echoed through the forest.
You cannot escape your fate.
The green light engulfed me. Max and Katie made it out of the woods. They never looked back. They never spoke of what happened that night. But they couldn't escape the nightmares, the memories. The witch's curse lived on. And somewhere, deep in the whispering woods, the witch waits. She waits for the next unsuspecting soul to stumble upon her cabin, the next victim to fall prey to her curse. The woods are silent now, but if you listen closely, you can hear it. The whisper, the curse. Be careful who you dare to bring into the whispering woods. You might not escape with your soul.